A hiker makes a grim discovery deep in the Angeles National Forest.
The body had been burned, and the only thing that was left were laundry tags.
The condition of the body is making identification nearly impossible.
We didn't have fingerprints available. We didn't have dental x-rays available.
A baffling case with a strange twist. How can the experts at North Mission Road help unravel this puzzling mystery? Summer 1985. High in the mountains overlooking Los Angeles, a hiker is stopped cold in her tracks.
She had discovered what she initially believed to be a mannequin. There was a body.
It's not the first time a body has been dumped in these rugged canyons, and sometimes it takes years to find the remains. But in this case, the body couldn't have been there more than a week.
We knew that the crime scene, actually, where the body was laying, was down in the culvert. There's a pathway that leads right down. We could see that there were drops of blood in and around the path. In this area, we could see drag marks as well as the blood leading down to the victim's body.
A stone flood control wall, dating back to the early 1930s, marked the spot.
And that's where the victim's body was laying, right up next to the wall.
The head, hands, and feet are missing. The torso is partially burned and covered by a tattered shirt.
The attempted cremation of the body resulted in charring of the skin, superficial burns, and partial burning of the clothing.
A small can of lighter fluid is found nearby, not nearly enough to incinerate the body.
To dispose of the body by burning, it would have taken a tremendous amount of heat for an extended period of time, and that could not have been supplied by the charcoal lighter fluid.
The killer managed to hide the body's ID, but not the body itself.
My partner and I had decided that it was not a professional killer. We could see that there was not enough blood around the scene to substantiate that the head, the hands, and the feet had been removed at the scene itself.
That meant only one thing.
The crime itself occurred someplace else, and the body was driven up to this location.
While cops search the area, investigator Claude Boucher arrives from the LA County coroner.
I took photographs of the body for the pathologist so he could visualize the scene without being there.
The victim and the crime scene offer few clues as to what happened.
I could not find any identification mark on the clothing itself or if there were more trauma to the decedent.
The body is tagged John Doe 148 and taken to North Mission Road to determine the cause and manner of death. But who is John Doe 148?
One of the biggest challenges in a John Doe investigation itself is actually making the identity of the victim. Once you've made the identity of the victim, you can generally establish where the crime occurred and the motive.
24 hours after the discovery of the body, Dr. Kogan does an autopsy and tells detectives how the victim was killed.
It wasn't until the following day when we ascertained that the victim had actually sustained 5 gunshot wounds.
Of the 5 gunshot wounds identified by Dr. Kogan, 4 show charring, so the gun was fired at close range.
The muzzle of the weapon was held against the body when the weapon was discharged.
3 bullets are still in the body, all lodged in the chest area. The other bullets are not found.
The firearm used is a .22 caliber type of weapon.
Dr. Kogan is now able to piece together the final terrifying moments in John Doe's life.
The autopsy findings would be consistent with the first shot being inflicted in the back of the neck, which would then disable the individual, and the other gunshot wounds being inflicted while the individual is on the ground.
Investigators know how John Doe died. But where do they go from here? All they've got is a torso. And that's precious little evidence to ID the victim and track down his killer. The torso of a murdered man is found in a ravine not far from Los Angeles and taken to North Mission Road. Who is he? And why was he killed?
We didn't have an idea as to what motive would have been. However, we continued with the investigation in order to establish the identity of the victim.
The coroner has been able to determine the victim's approximate age, height, and weight. But that's about all. 60 miles south, detectives in Orange County also have a mystery on their hands. A man named Arthur Lee Evans has been reported missing under suspicious circumstances.
He had a very close relationship with his mother. I mean, he talked to his mom almost every day. And all of a sudden, that stopped.
It was very unusual for Mr. Art Evans to disappear and not contact anybody, specifically his daughter or his closest friend.
Investigators soon discover that Evans has a criminal record. For years, he bilked money out of unsuspecting investors in an elaborate insurance scam, until his luck finally ran out.
Art had been incarcerated on a fraud charge. He had defrauded about 100 people out of about $11 million, and so he had done a year in county jail.
Back at North Mission Road, Dr. Kogan continues his efforts to identify John Doe 148.
There were still some remnants of clothing and cloth on the body, which were given to the police.
Among the scraps of clothing not burned is a laundry tag. This too is sent to the crime lab. Then investigators in LA catch a break. A missing persons bulletin out of Orange County grabs the attention of Sheriff's Detective Woodrow West.
At that time, teletypes were sent out to various stations about crimes that have occurred where the investigators are looking for information.
The name Arthur Lee Evans doesn't mean anything to West, but Evans is about the same age and size as John Doe 148. So West wonders if this missing person and his unidentified victim are one and the same.
At which time we contacted the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
We send investigators up to gather the evidence that they have.
They agree with West. John Doe in LA, Arthur Lee Evans in Orange County. Probably the same guy. But it's still just an educated guess. Although the case has been turned over to Orange County cops, the body remains at North Mission Road, so they can continue searching for the victim's identity.
In the pre-DNA era, you'd have to rely on physical characteristics, height and weight, color of hair, color of eyes, scars on the body.
Since John Doe 148 was found headless, many identifying features are gone. But investigators have Arthur Evans' medical records to review for similarities.
We determined that he had a hernia scar on his left lower abdomen.
And I went back to examine the body, examine the torso, and I did indeed identify a scar in that area.
But this is a very common type of scar, so it's far from rock-solid proof. Investigators would need some other way to confirm that John Doe 148 is indeed Arthur Lee Evans. Otherwise, solving this case will be nearly impossible. Cops suspect John Doe 148 is Arthur Lee Evans, but much more detailed investigation is needed to make a positive ID. While Evans was locked up for fraud, he and Philip Fry, a con artist, became friends. After being paroled, they rented a house together until Art Evans didn't come home one day.
Art's stepdaughter advised that she had received a call from Phil Fry that Art had disappeared, that he had moved out on Phil.
Fry tells police Evans simply packed up and left. He says he has no idea where he went.
Missing from the house was furniture, clothing of Art's, toiletries, etc.
Had Evans simply moved out?
All of the property, furniture, TVs, everything had been cleaned out.
At that point, we freeze the location and get a search warrant. With all the years that we have on as homicide investigators, you kind of get a sixth sense of knowing that this thing's not going to play out really good.
He had a dog that everybody said he just loved, and the dog was left there.
Art's car was parked in the driveway. In the trunk, we found what appeared to be blood and a shovel in the car that also appeared to have blood on it.
This suggests Evans met with foul play. This could only mean one thing, and it's not good.
We found blood on the tile kitchen floor in front of the oven.
Diluted blood as if it had been washed down.
Some on the stairway that lead to the basement of the house.
And so samples of that diluted blood was taken.
The samples are sent to North Mission Road, where the coroner compares the blood with that of John Doe 148.
This is pre-DNA, so we were identifying through blood typing.
Blood typing, at that time, you would not give 100% certification, but it would be pretty good.
The blood samples are a close match, but not definitive. Down in Orange County, cops turn up the heat on Philip Fry. With potentially incriminating evidence staring him in the face, Fry suddenly changes his story.
He says, I came home, Art was there was a dead body in the house.
Phil Fry made some unusual statements about a burglar who had entered the house on the previous night and that Art had shot the burglar.
He says, Art said, nobody's going to believe me because I'm on probation.
Fry claims he cleaned up the burglar's blood while Evans disposed of the body. Then his story becomes even more bizarre.
According to Mr. Fry, Art said, you got to take me to Mexico. And I took him down to the border, and that's the last I saw him.
If true, it means Evans is still alive. Investigators don't buy Fry's story, but they've got to check it out.
We need to see if Art's still alive and there is a burglar that's dead somewhere.
As they continue searching the residence, detectives uncover more clues.
In Phil Fry's room, we found a couple of different shell casings and one particular unspent hollow point round.
And that bullet was of the type of the bullets that were recovered from the torso. By itself, obviously doesn't prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, but another piece of circumstantial evidence.
Detectives also find receipts for a rental truck and storage units.
We located a good portion of the furniture at various storage facilities and at a couple individuals' homes.
The house search reveals one more clue in Art Evans' room. that connects him to John Doe 148.
We had found receipts for laundry where Mr. Evans had taken his laundry.
Fortunately for investigators, the owner of the dry cleaners keeps meticulous records.
We were able to match the laundry receipt that was found in the victim's bedroom with the laundry tags that were on the corpse.
It's a strong indication that John Doe 148 really is Arthur Lee Evans. But a suspect still maintains his former roommate is on the run in Mexico. To solve the case, investigators need to prove beyond a doubt that Evans is the body in cold storage at North Mission Road. Arthur Lee Evans has been killed, and Orange County cops suspect his roommate, Philip Fry, is the murderer. Despite incriminating evidence, Fry sticks to his story.
Mr. Fry claimed that we had the wrong body and that the victim was still alive.
With no teeth available, a forensic radiologist is called into North Mission Road. He'll attempt to answer whether Evans and John Doe 148 are one and the same.
The X-ray pictures really are kind of the end of the line for making identifications after all other methods have been exhausted.
In a last-ditch effort to make the connection, Dr. Don Boger compares X-rays from Arthur Evans' medical file with those taken of John Doe 148.
The chest X-ray is the most commonly available image for comparison.
And chest X-rays are especially revealing.
It's not just one bone, but 12 paired ribs, all the vertebrae. You have a lot of different structures that can be used for identification.
Dr. Boger looks for bones and vertebrae that are identical on both X-rays.
I strive to get as many as I can. If I can get 10, great. If I can get 20, better.
He finds distinctive indentations on the ribs on both sets of X-rays.
So this is a positive identification.
John Doe 148 is, in fact, Arthur Lee Evans. Now prosecutors would have to prove it in court. Philip Fry is arrested. And months later, the case finally goes to trial, with a strange twist.
Obviously, the first thing that we had to do was to prove that the victim was dead.
And not hiding out in Mexico, as Fry claims. The prosecutor calls on the experts at North Mission Road.
We had an arsenal of evidence to prove that the body that was found up in Mount Baldy was in fact Mr. Evans.
The prosecution argues the scar, the laundry tags, and the X-rays erase any doubt about the identity of the headless body.
That was the first phase of the people's case. The second phase is to show that it was the defendant who killed Mr. Evans.
The DA points to Fry's motive, one of the oldest in the books.
It was greed, it was money, and an element of revenge involved.
How much money? Ironically, the man who bilked millions out of unassuming investors was killed for less than the price of a used car.
There was an argument between the defendant and the victim over a $7,500 check. And we had a witness who was told by the defendant that if Art doesn't pay me that money, I'm going to make him disappear.
The verdict comes down just hours after closing arguments.
The jury convicted Philip Fry of first-degree murder, premeditation, and deliberation.
But there's one more twist to this strange story. Fry appeals his conviction, still insisting that Evans is alive. Then, nearly 5 years after the murder, another disturbing discovery.
In May of 1990, hikers found a human skull. And a forensic odontologist took our dental records that we had on Art Evans and positively confirmed them to the teeth that were located in the skull. That pretty much sealed the fact that Art Evans is dead.
A tale of greed and murder. One more case from the files of the Los Angeles County Coroner.